practice this. So we plan to have it be fairly informal with our presentation. So just to get started here, here's our outline. We want to use a particular framework in talking about this, something we call the hydrosocial cycle. And so explain to you what the hydrosocial cycle is, and we'll talk about it in the context of Mekelle that has experienced both drought and conflict. We'll talk about water provisioning pre-conflict, water provisioning post-conflict and the challenges that brings with it, and then next steps that we think that might be able to be put into place. And I would say the backdrop for all of this is the continued drought that's going on in Eastern Africa, which has been quite phenomenal. So just a little bit of background, as Amanda said, this was part of something called the Secondary Cities Project out of the U.S. Department of State. We were mapping human geography data for emergency preparedness and long-term planning. And we had 16 partner cities around the world, and one of them was Mekelle. And we were really specifically looking at water supply and infrastructure in Mekelle to understand how people had access to water and what that meant for emergency preparedness, and thinking that that was important within the context of the drought at that time, because we started this in 2015. So I first started working with Daniel, and we've continued to work together since. The hydrosocial cycle looks at things through understanding multiple communities that interact about water. And we'll explain that a little bit more as we go on. But with that, I'm going to pass it to Daniel to tell us a little bit about Mekelle. I don't hear you, Daniel. Are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, it was interrupted. Thank you, Mel. So like what Melinda was stating, we had a project on as part of a secondary city on Mekelle. And as a continuation of that one, now we are working as on a community science in Mekelle related to water. So I will try to brief a little bit about Mekelle City. This is the second largest city in Ethiopia, next to the capital city, that is Addis Ababa. It has an estimated population of close to 500,000, 500,000, and the area of the city is currently 322 kilometers squared. Not all 322 kilometers squared area is built up area. Maybe very small portion of that area is a built up area in terms of facilities, infrastructures. It's only recently that the city is expanding. That's why they are giving some additional rooms for future expansion as well. The city is divided into 7 sub-cities. And we have rapid sprawl and development of housing to accommodate the ever-increasing population. Also, there is an increasing in infrastructures and utilities also in the city, though it's not really satisfying the demand of the whole population. So with this 500,000 population, this is what is expected, forecasted by the Central Statistics Agency. But we expect also higher population during the daytime because there are also influxes of daily laborers coming from the outskirts of the city. So it's also a significant number. And nowadays we have also internally displaced people from all over the Tigray region because of the past conflict and some conflicts recently as well. When we come to our interests, that is water, Mekelle City had piped water supply since 1957. Still, we have also a piped water supply system in most part of the city. So this is what I can specify about Mekelle City, and they now give the room to Melinda, maybe to the next slide.
All right, thanks, Daniel, for that context. So in looking at this, we're using this framework that we call the hydrosocial cycle. And what this enables us to do is look at water from different perspectives. And so our focus here is on urban water and urban water supply. And you can see all the different aspects of urban water supply or urban water that exists: water delivery, water treatment, stormwater drainage, wastewater treatment, all these different aspects that then are structured around the social power structure, the technology and infrastructure that's necessary, and then the physicality of water, the actual water that we're looking at and what it is. And as Daniel mentioned, we're looking at the type of water flows that are in Mekelle, and he'll talk more about that as we go forward on this discussion. But essentially what we're examining are the institutional arrangements, the policy and government systems, and as well as the informal arrangements that provide water. When we think of the physicality of water, we're saying what are the source and the types and the data that we need to understand how water is accessed and who needs provisioning of such water supply. And then what is the technology kinds of infrastructure that needs to be in place in order to access this and understand this. Mekelle is what we would also call not only a secondary city, but an extreme city. It's experienced rapid growth. It has limited infrastructure. It's changing environmental conditions and a growing vulnerable population. So all of these are important aspects of how we figure out how to manage water. So in the first instance here, trying to operationalize our framework, we're looking at Mekelle urban water and extreme events such as a drought. And so if we start to unpack our different aspects of our framework, we can see that in terms of water information, that there is a river that we need to understand. There are groundwater sources that we'll need boreholes to access. And then the context of the drought itself. When does rain arrive? What's happening with the rainy season to replenish water supply, things like that. The infrastructure itself then speaks to what are the water treatment plants and how do people actually access this in terms of the water supply. There's reservoir systems, there's water trucks that provision water, as well as the need to have aquifer management. That's all complicated with sanitation issues. And then the social power structure itself, the multiple participants we have. There's a large informal management of water that goes on in Mekelle. How do we understand that in relationship to the governing mechanisms and the policies that are there? And with that, I'll pass it back to Daniel. Daniel, you're on mute.
So thanks, Mel. So as part of the hydrosocial aspects, we will try to see water provisioning, especially with urban water supply system, before pre-conflict and after conflict. So before pre-conflict, we had a lot of efforts done in terms of production of databases related to water supply, and also urban infrastructures and services for Mekelle City. So we had good communication with that time with water sector partners, and from them we collected several data sets, and from those data sets we also produced several value-added products based on satellite images and also based on some ground-based techniques. So from here we can see that, for example, what we produced is the location of various wells in Mekelle and also around the cities. Deep wells, shallow wells, hand-dug wells. There are different types of water sources for Mekelle, from private and public. We try to map this data set and see how these data pointers are accessible to the population in terms of access to well, access to roads, especially transport systems. We have seen these ones, and we have ample data from this one, and thanks for the secondary city geonode. We had most of this data still available on these ones, not only for Mekelle, also for the other cities. Still several researches can be done based on this one. I would like to thank also the secondary city geonode for this provision, because nowadays, especially after the conflict, some of these data are not anymore available at the water institutes. We were able to save this one. Not only ground-based data, we have also, if you, Melinda, click the next slide, We can have also, okay, back again. Maybe back, okay. Not only not only value-added data sets, we have also high-resolution satellite image from Planet Lab for Mekelle City on a daily basis, and these kinds of data are available at Mekelle, so we can utilize this data for our community and for also for future research aspects. So this is what happens before the conflict as well. We have sufficient database data sets available for the city. And when it comes to water provisioning, most of the water supply from Mekelle used to be, before the conflict, centralized water sources, especially from public wells and also public dams. For Mekelle, there are close to 29 boreholes that used to be operational at a yield of, or a production yield of around 33,000 meter cube per day. Those 29 boreholes are producing. These are not sufficient to meet the demands. Almost they are half the demand by the population at that time. So there are also service reservoirs, around 13 service reservoirs. As you can see, they are all above the ground reservoirs built during that time. Some of them are still functional, but during the pre-conflict time, they were the major reservoirs to supply water by gravity to the city. Next slide. As part of the centralized water production system, the other sources for Mekelle were also dams, surface dams. There were 2 or 3 dams planned to be designed at that time. One was operational, and this was one of the major sources to supplement water supply in Mekelle. This surface water dam from Garab Sagan had also a water treatment plant close to it. It is an earth dam with a storage capacity of 12 million meter cubed, with a dam height around 45 meters. Originally, it was designed for irrigation purpose, but later on, because of the water shortage or scarcity in Mekelle City, it was converted to be as a source of water supply for Mekelle. So it's producing around 10,000 meter cube per day. Still, that was not sufficient because 33 meter cube, 33,000 from wells and 10,000 meter cube from the dam is not sufficient to meet the demand of Mekelle. As a result, there was a plan to have phase 2 of Garab Sagan with a capacity of 50,000 meter cube per day. That was still pre-conflict time. And furthermore, there was another dam north of Mekelle City, that is what we call it Garab Giba, that was under construction, had a capacity, a planned capacity of designed capacity of 142 meter cubed per day. And during pre-conflict time, that was also under construction. Next. So these were the major public wells and dams that the government was supplying the water supply for Mekelle. And there were also additional private wells that were also providing water supply for Mekelle. They are decentralized. They are more of owned by private individuals and investors. There are significant number of wells to our beyond our expectation. There are like more than 600 wells are also distributed within the city, and all are private wells providing water to Mekelle informal. They are not controlled by the government, but individuals are also selling this water through various means. Maybe we had Melinda, we had also image on this one. Maybe we are using the first version of the slides. We had several ways of transporting water from the private wells to the community. The image that you are viewing here is, for example, one of a private well, and they are selling water to hollow brick production company or owner. So mostly those private wells are selling water through trucks and carts, and also manually people were carrying jerry cans, and these were also supplementing the decentralized water wells are also supplementing the public centralized water wells before the pre-conflict. Next slide. Okay, Melinda.
So that sets the stage then for the conflict that has taken place in northwestern Ethiopia. And this was a conflict between the Tigray Liberation Front and the Ethiopian federal government. And so that changed the nature of the communities that were working together to provide water in Mekelle. As Daniel has just explained, you had government project, you had external international projects being constructed in terms of the dam by the Chinese. We had water data being collected by local government in partnership with the university, and then the construction of the infrastructure and trying to assert these policies. The conflict happened, and suddenly you have a changing landscape of all the different communities that are involved in terms of provisioning water, and what does that mean? What happens? You know, extreme conditions where the water projects were stopped, the destruction of the water infrastructure, the impact upon the different wells, how the communities could be able to access water, and then the movement of people. You have over 2 million internally displaced people in northern Ethiopia, compounded by the drought, pending famine, and the challenge of getting aid there, which was cut off for a bit of time, and Daniel can talk more specifically about that. So we had damage, looting, destruction of the infrastructure, and then a lot of new players coming in, the humanitarian aid entities trying to get assistance in. And so that changes the nature of this hydrosocial cycle and the provisioning of water. And with that, I pass it back to you, Daniel. And you're on mute again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we have provided a little bit brief overview of what the water supply systems looks like before the conflict time. Then around 2018, we had a political conflict, and it was not a physical one. The physical one started around 2020. There were internal conflicts like siege, reduced funds, interrupted road connections with the central part of Ethiopia, with the other part of Ethiopia. And this one escalates. And in 2020, we had a physical war that escalated to the use of force and violence. And that one further proceed to intrastate conflicts that you might have heard about, the northern Ethiopian conflicts. So there are several diseases and disabilities that result from the combat among the military and the civilian population starting from 2020. And not only the diseases and the disabilities that were the major ones outcomes of the conflict, but we have also damage and destructions of water supply systems that we can divide into the direct damage and indirect damage. The direct damages as a result of the conflict during the war, because most of the water facilities in Mekelle and also in Tigray, they have been military targets. And not only during the conflict, direct military targets, there were also vandalisms and also later on lootings of some of the facilities that I will later on indicate in detail. And there are also indirect damage that after the post-conflict, end of the conflict, we have seen that there are lack of services and maintenances to most of the water supply systems in Mekelle, and that results in the lack of service delivery and prohibits with full delivery of water to Mekelle City. Next slide. So as you can see, this one, there was a damage assessment report by the water supply and sanitation service system of Mekelle. And we can see that there are several aspects of the damage. This is specifically for the services in Mekelle, water distribution systems, reservoirs, facilities, gates, all is almost damaged at major points. And that has really affected the water distribution at then and also now, because most of them are not still under maintenance. So that's why it's become difficult to reconnect the pre-conflict water distribution system in Mekelle after the post-conflict, especially that happened since January 2023. There is an agreement between the federal government and the regional government for cessation of hostilities. And since then, still it's difficult to recover the water supply systems in Mekelle because of all these damages. And next slide.
So obviously, there's still a lot of work to be done in this area. And so we're starting to look at the recovery and adaptation. So how do we begin to think about this idea of resilience planning for water supply? And who are the different parts of the community that need to be engaged to be able to make this successful? And what are the different projects that need to happen? As Daniel will talk about now, we've seen the central water supply system that's been in place that has essentially been impacted and damaged by the conflict. And so is the next step to consider how decentralized water supply is provided, and what does that mean, and who are the players that have to come and participate in that, and how is the community engaged? So I pass that back to you, Daniel. And you're on mute again.
Thank you. So as a continuation, in the post-conflict, several of the facilities, the water supply facilities, we had laboratories and other facility offices in the seven sub-cities. Before the pre-conflict time, we had sufficient chemicals and reagents required to satisfy and maintain the water quality standard parameters in Mekelle. There were regular monitoring of the water quality from the wells and also from the dams. And also they had also regular follow-ups of some of the private wells for sanitation issue. But after the post-conflict, there is lack of all laboratory and chemicals are damaged, and there is lack of reagents, and also staffs are not able to do the required chemical analysis and the like, because there are also limitations in the number of staffs to carry out these activities. In terms of also sanitation, Mekelle City has also several public toilets in the city. Most of them are not also working in this regards. Before the pre-conflict, they had also sufficient number of solid waste and fecal sludge emptying and transporting services. Nowadays, these are not anymore functional, especially for the solid waste removal. People are doing it by themselves. They remove the waste to the open streets, and that also affects the environmental issue of the cities. For example, there were also 25 number of public and 55 number of communal toilets in the city, but most of them, they are not working because they are looted and damaged during the conflict time. Next slide. When we come to the water production, previously I said, I already indicated that most of the water was produced from the wells and also from one of the dams. But now we have seen that there is insufficient water production from all over available public water supply sources in Mekelle, from the dam as well. They are not really functioning at their optimal capacities. Moreover, expansion projects that were planned from Garab Giba and Garab Sagan, they are now anymore on progress. They are all suspended. Garab Sagan phase 2 is suspended. Garab Giba project with 142,000 meter cube capacity per day is still that one is also suspended. A significant number of switchboards and generators for the wells are looted and damaged, and power interruption, especially from the Ethiopian electric power authority grid system, especially this is in the beginning of 2023, that also affects the water provision from the wells. So what the office was doing is they were transporting generators, standby generators to the wells by truck, and they were pumping water to the reservoirs because the electrical water supplies for the wells were not from the grid was not functional. And moreover, what we had is now there is limited staffing because they were as part of the combatants, and also for various reasons, there are also limited staffing. So maintenance, new line expansion schemes, they are not anymore functional in the city. Next slide. When it comes to the water distribution systems, that is also significantly affected during the post-conflict time nowadays. One is scaling problems, that is roughness, because the water distribution is not, pipes are not functional for a long time, like 2 years, 3 years. Fittings and pipe distribution lines were clogged, and maintaining that one becomes a serious challenges. As a result, some of the sub-cities in the Mekelle, they were not functional or could not get water for several months, I would say. And more or less, there will also make a major leakage at one of the dams, the major water supplement for Mekelle, the Garabsagan. Still, that is not maintained. As a result, Garabsagan is not really producing water at its full capacity right now. Like I said, some of the reinstallation works that were planned to expand new water distribution system to Mekelle, they are suspended. As a result, there are some kabeles or sub-cities seriously affected. They couldn't find, could not get sufficient water, like sub-cities in Daaro, in Adiha. They could not get still sufficient water. As a result, most of the residents in these areas, they get water like once in 1 month from the central water supply system. Pipe from some of the reservoir to the city still is not functional, and on-site pipes are also damaged in some parts of the city. Next slide. The central water supply system that used to be the major source of water during the pre-conflict time is now in a danger. It cannot supply water at full capacity to the residents in Mekelle. For example, like the surrounding rural village around Mekelle, there were like 60 hindered wells. During the pre-conflict time, they were providing water to the outskirt area. And now almost all of them are non-functional because of damage and lack of maintenance. Still lack of maintenance because of equipment, budget, and staffing is also a major problem. As a result, more than 30,000 beneficiaries around these outskirts are not really getting tapped water or water from wells, and they are using unprotected water sources like springs and rivers. As a result, the central water supply system is now highly augmented with the decentralized private wells. They are not really formals, they are illegal water sources. Like I said, there are more than 600 wells. Several hotels, investment sectors are drilling their own shallow wells, some up to 20 meters, some below 20 meters, some motorized ones, and some are simply open wells from the unaquifer from those wells. So they are not really protected. They have major challenges, but still most of the residents, they are using heavily now from these private wells. So that's why we have witnessed nowadays that from the centralized public water systems, the city is shifting to the decentralized private well water supply systems. The government has really a concern on those private wells, but still there are issues, some from sanitation and pollution aspects, or some from mining or pumping of these wells. But there is no way to control and stop them. As a result, they are serving the public as a major water source nowadays. Next slide. On top of that, like I said, nowadays there is the population forecast is around 500,000 for Mekelle, but beyond that, after the conflict, we have internally displaced people coming from various parts of Tigray, and they are sheltered in Mekelle. Most of them, they are sheltered in public compounds like school buildings, temporary built shelters. The major IDP centers are now school buildings. As a result, school cannot resume for most of the time, especially in the beginning of 2023. So the estimate is like 234,000 IDP, internally displaced people, are sheltered in various school buildings and temporary built shelters in Mekelle. This is in 2023 from UN reports. In 2019, internally displaced people throughout the whole Tigray was only 96. So you can see only in Mekelle now is close to 2 million internally displaced people. So the water supply and sanitation is a challenge. Addressing this issue in Mekelle is a challenge. As you can see from the first map, there was nowadays in several parts of Ethiopia, there are also internally displaced peoples and shelters. As you can see, zoomed in versions from Mekelle. This is a report from International Organization for Migration, IOM. There are also several spots where there are IDP centers in Tigray. And when you zoom into Mekelle, the third picture, lower bottom, you can see that there are several spots, close to 27 IDP centers in Mekelle, sheltering around 234,000. So addressing the water and sanitation issue for this on top of the existing water supply system is really a challenge and headache for international organizations and also for the government as well. Next slide. So as you can see that searching for clean water is not really an easy, especially for the IDP community. So they have to use their own jerry cans and walk around at a distance to reservoirs and also wells to fetch water. Still, international organizations like UNHCR, International Red Cross societies, all these are also supplying waters to the communities through trucks, but that's not sufficient. So that's why people are also, you can see in the various water wells, especially private water wells, it's becoming common to see people queuing with their yellow jerry cans for fetching water in Mekelle City. Next slide. So with all these challenges, now we have seen that the centralized water supply system is not really working as planned, and even the expansion projects are now suspended. As a result, most of the community and also the internally displaced people communities are dwelling on the private wells and also unsafe water sources. So what we need to do for the future, for the next plan for Mekelle, we have some outlines, and Mel will also add on these ones. The first one is for proper utilization of limited water resources is very important. There is no proper document how many wells are really functioning in Mekelle from the private, how much water is pumped, and what will be its impact for in terms of sustainability in the future. That's not properly documented. But what we have seen nowadays is there were most researches emphasizing on water as a driver to conflict. You'll find a lot of researches, especially as Ethiopia, as origin of the Blue Nile. We can see that a lot of researches are also indicating that the next war will be on water. So water will be as a driver to conflict. That was, there are several documents to this regard, because water is becoming competing for various uses. And there is also growing population, especially in Ethiopia, East Africa. And there is also an issue of inefficiency in delivering water, especially like Mekelle. Nowadays is estimated close to 30 to 40% is leakage on the water distribution systems. So inefficiency is also one issue for water as a driver to conflict. But nowadays we are seeing the reverse. That is, political conflicts impact the water systems. So in this regard, there are limited researches, and Mekelle is an evident city in terms of these ones. It's not because of water stress, but political conflicts impacted the water system in Mekelle. And we have witnessed that the water supply system in Mekelle is moving backward from the centralized option to the decentralized systems. Not only the water supply systems, we have seen that the waste disposal system is not really properly functioning. A lot of business firms, individuals, householders, they are simply dumping waste disposals on the streets, and that might lead to environmental pollution in the future, because the major water source for Mekelle is groundwater, and that will affect more the near future. And we might see more scenarios, worse scenarios maybe in the future in terms of the water supply systems in the future. So we recommend maybe how the conflicts, the political system impacted specifically the water system in Mekelle and in the northern Ethiopia. We need to do a lot of researches in this respect. On the next slide. The other aspect that we can do at hand is in terms of management, that is from the supply side as well as the demand side. So we need to have the supply side management, that is extension of the water sources. Additional water sources are important. So the Garab second with extension of phase 2 should resume as soon as possible, if possible. The Garab Giba Dam with a capacity of 228 meter cube per day, that has to also be resumed. It's now suspended. So we need to have additional waters from the surface water. I don't think so we will have additional options for the groundwater anymore because we are mining a lot from the groundwater in Mekelle. Maybe we need to also think of additional sewage treatments to supplement the water supplies for various purposes. For example, the city is booming and there is a lot of demands for construction, water for construction purposes. So supplying or supplementing the water from sewage treatment can be an option for Mekelle City to reduce the burden from the groundwater and the dam as well. Maybe we need to allow industries to dig their own private wells. Now the challenge is still they are doing this one, but it's not controlled. How much water they are extracting is not properly monitored, and we need to have a proper mechanism on this one. Otherwise, it will be affecting the groundwater as well. From the demand side, we need to have also maintenance of damaged water supply infrastructure system. It's not mainly, this is mainly in terms of increasing efficiency on the water distribution side, not increasing the water supply from the source. So as we already indicated, there are several damages to the water distribution system and reservoirs, and we need to maintain this as much as possible. And also monitoring of private wells, how much water is extracted from these private wells is very important. There's also concern from the government in terms of the amount of water extraction and also from the sanitation and pollution aspect that has to be monitored, and they can be a good source of supplementing the central water system in the future. Next slide.
We have just this one last slide, and I know that we're reaching the end of the hour, but just to, Daniel, maybe go over this quickly, and then we can open for just a few questions before we have to end.
Okay, so as a recommendation, what we have seen is we have now from the various sector offices in Mekelle, there is a damage assessment report, especially for the water supply services. And that has to be triangulated with, like what I've already indicated, with researches and also additional, like from our community sciences. This could be one of our tasks. We can triangulate the damage assessment reports, and the government can really utilize additional information from these ones. The other one is now the regional government is interim government, so strengthening institutional and governance capacity is very important. During the conflict, we lost a lot of human resources and also physical structures. So supporting the regional government, institutions, the universities through various aspects of capacity, short-term and long-term, is very important. The community science that we are thinking can also be one option that we can supplement the Bureau of Water Supplies to recover from the post-trauma after the post-conflict. Violent conflict has also a direct and indirect negative effect on all aspects of infrastructures, which in turn can lead to a decline in water supply systems. So with this regard, we need to maximize the benefits of existing private wells. We should not really abandon them and focus on the centralized distribution system. Still, they can be, I don't think so, the government will, in the short term, fulfill the water supply of Mekelle from the centralized system. So we need to really capacitate, monitor, and map those private wells, so that for the benefit of the benefit of the population, we need to also rely on this one properly. And finally, like what Mel has indicated, further studies on hydrosocial cycle in Mekelle should be strengthened. So thank you very much for your attention. So.
And here is our contact information. If you have any questions for Daniel and I, you know, I felt this was Daniel's story to tell, and Daniel, you did just a great job of explaining this, and I'll hand it back to Amanda.
Thank you, Daniel and Mel, so much. It was a really fabulous and pretty heartbreaking story to hear the challenges of what's being experienced there right now and over the past many years. Let's see, I see that Sachin has their hand raised. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, Mr. Daniel. Maybe I'm not the expert on the subject, but I have one question. Like I was considering the rainfall and the groundwater resources, and I've understood that Ethiopia have more groundwater resources. Comparing that, like may I know, like how much does it cost to actually build a well or a bore well, and may I ask, like, how is it maintained? And also, like, what are the challenges you people actually face? Like if you want to dig a well, or else try to install bore wells and get an periodic water release, something on that end. May I have any opinions or something on this end? I'm just curious.
Daniel, I'll pass that to you.
Yes, Sanchez, so your interest, your question inquiries with respect to how much it costs us for groundwater extraction of waters. Sorry if I missed it.
Yes, like how much does it cost to actually get a bore well and, you know, get a water out, groundwater resources? Yes. And
Yeah.
how can we map it? Do we have proper resources to map it? Like which is more easier to, yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Sanchin. Yeah, groundwater extraction is not really easy in Mekelle. It's very costly ones, but surface water dam construction is even more expensive one. It doesn't mean that we are relying on groundwater, doesn't mean we have sufficient groundwater, but because construction of surface water dams are very expensive. So it's in I would say in millions of USD for construction of wells up to like 60-meter depths. The casing is the drilling and all fittings, installing all the pumps that will cost close to 1 million USD up to, for example, if it is like up to 60-meter depths, or 500,000 if it is up to 20-meter depths. So it's, I would say, expensive.
Can I interrupt and ask a question?
Yes.
May I ask, like, how much does it cost to actually build a private well or else a normal well?
Yeah, for the private wells, especially for the hindered wells, it is very easy. In some parts of the city, especially close to around the rivers or the drainage systems, the water well can be obtained up 5-meter, 10-meter depths. So people can dig by hand very easily, and they can extract that water. For shallow hindered wells, it can be very low compared to up to up between 10-meter and 20-meter, they can dig with rig machines. So that's, I would say, it depends on the formation still, hard rock, soft rocks, but still in the order of, I would say, 100,000 USD for the
And
private
also,
investment.
is there the implementation of bore wells and Mekelle? Like you will keep pipes and keep extracting, like, because in India I see in most of the farms they kind of use that way to extract water, bore wells.
Yes.
Okay, and how about the situation on that?
In terms of bore wells?
Yes.
Yeah, still the ones with the casings and all the protected wells that we'll find in Mekelle are the public ones. That ones are even more expensive because their depth is up to 100 meters. But the open wells that you will find on the private wells, like I said, they are open wells. They are from the unconfined aquifers. So you can see the water table easily. They are unprotected, then they are very easy, and any household can do it by itself.
Okay, and does government have any regulations or anything, or can anyone just dig and get the water? How is that scenario?
Yeah, that was what one of our recommendation. Nowadays, though there is a policy in terms of how much water you have to extract, who has to really dig a well, but it's difficult to control under the existing staffing and capacity of the Water Supply Bureau. So anyone illegally can dig and extract and sell, and that is a challenge. That's why we said we need to map them and control, and so that the government can control them easily.
Okay. One more final question. This is
Yes.
regarding internet. Like, may I know how accessible is the internet, and what is the cost of internet in Mekelle?
Yeah, nowadays, especially up in this time, most of the cities in Ethiopia, they are now connected to 4G and 5G cell phone internets, and they have also these fiber optics connections. In Mekelle, the fiber optics connection and the cell tower connection, internet, mobile data is at low capacity, I would say. Like now, it is at 3G, and in most of the cell towers, it's 2G, I would say. So it's slow, unless like in the public universities, it's the connection is slow.
Okay. And may I get a little approximation about the expenses on the internet?
Normally, it's cheap, I would say. The connection, the fees for the mobile data are very cheap. The
Okay.
challenges, the capacities, the strength is very, very slow.
Okay. So it is affordable. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
it's
it
very
from my end.
affordable. Yes.
Yeah.
No,
Thank you,
thank
Daniel.
you.
It was yeah.
Thank you so much. Those were wonderful questions, Sachin. If you guys are okay with staying on a little while longer, I am. We can have Pooja ask her question.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be asking very quickly.
Okay.
Very interesting presentation. Thank you so much for that. Just I'm curious to learn that in this project of yours, have you considered or are you considering any climate impacts or disaster impacts in the project? If yes, then how are you doing that?
Yes, like Mel was indicating, in these hydrosocial aspects, Mekelle is not only as part of a secondary city, but also as an extreme city, which is highly affected by drought and sometimes those extreme events of flooding, mostly by droughts. So as the city is located in arid and semi-arid part of the country, definitely we consider the lower extreme events, the drought aspects for water provision scenarios.
I would just follow up really quickly with that one of the priorities of the Secondary Cities project was to address emergency preparedness. And so understanding the situation in the context of humanitarian GIS, the kinds of things we need to do to identify where aid is needed, how to get that most effectively to people, and working with access to high resolution satellite imagery, being able to map those things in partnership with Daniel's students. All of these things are what came out of Secondary Cities to help us with some of that. That was all pre-conflict. And so I think the landscape is quite different. And so we need to probably update our data.
Yes. Maybe I have seen one of a comment also from one of the participants from Yasin. Normally, when we said from centralized to decentralized, it's not a recommendation from centralized to decentralized. It's what's happening because of the conflict. Definitely care should be taken when we are using or utilizing private wells. And that is also the concern from the government. Yeah, it's true. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. That was such a fascinating discussion. I have many questions, Daniel, so I'm going to email you my questions later on because we're currently working on a publication together. So it's really exciting to hear all of this. And before we go, I just want to share Brian from National Science Foundation / the Belmont Forum wanted to share, and I used to work for them, so I want to give them a little plug real quick. They go through a process called scoping, where they talk with different experts around a certain topic, and then they build a funding mechanism around what they learn from those experts. So if you have a topic that is kind of, it behooves one, I would say, to participate in this scoping process, because you can really like help dictate what the funding process and the topic would look like to something that's more tailored to your work. So it's good to participate. There's one on environmental peace building, which probably maybe some of you would be interested in and have a lot to share on. So feel free to go to this, here it is, this website, and you'll be able to see that scoping, those scopings, and where they'll be held, and to get your voice involved in that. With that, I would just like to thank you all for joining. Thank you all, Melinda and Daniel, for the work that you do, and everyone here today. And we'll be chatting in our WhatsApp group. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great time.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.